My husband claimed, "My ex will be at Christmas dinner with us." He never imagined what came afterward. My hands shook around the stem of my wineglass as the scene at my Christmas table unraveled. The fairy lights I'd carefully looped over the windows threw hard, accusing halos across faces I'd once trusted. Faces that had lied. Faces that had taken my life and folded it into something ugly. You knew," my husband rasped. All the color had drained from his skin. He was staring at the man in the doorway, the man I had invited, the quiet stranger whose arrival was about to blow our carefully curated holiday to pieces. I smiled at my husband, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had spent 6 weeks swallowing poison and memorizing every bitter drop. 6 weeks pretending not to know. 6 weeks rehearsing this exact explosion. "Of course I knew," I said, my voice sugar-sweet and deadly. "You asked me to be mature. Look at me. I'm being very mature." His ex, the one he'd insisted on inviting, the one he'd said just needed somewhere to go for Christmas, went as pale as the snow outside. Her manicured hand flew to her mouth. She knew what that doorway meant. She knew exactly who had just walked into my house. That was the moment the real screaming started. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand this night, you have to go back to when I still believed in fairy tales. Back in the day I found the message. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. It was October 15th, our 7th wedding anniversary. I remembered because I'd romanticized that number. 7 years with Marcus Whitfield, the man I'd loved since college, the boy who'd promised me forever under a sky full of stars at a rented lake house in the Adirondacks. He was the man who held my hand while we mourned 2 miscarriages, the man who always said, "We'll get our family someday." Even after everything, that memory still cut. That evening I'd done what I always did, tried to make things special. I cooked his favorite herb-crusted lamb, roasted potatoes, and asparagus slick with olive oil. I wore a new emerald dress he claimed made my brown eyes look like gemstones. Candles glowed in every corner of our Atlanta house, softening the suburban walls into something almost magical. In my mind, our life was still mostly perfect. I just didn't know yet that everything I'd said on the table that night sat on top of a lie. Marcus's phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the kitchen counter while he showered. I wasn't the type to snoop. I never had been. Trust had always been my thing, my pride even. But something about the relentless vibration, the way the screen kept lighting up, made my stomach twist. I glanced over. A contact labeled simply VH filled the preview bar. "Can't stop thinking about last weekend. When can I see you again? Have you told her yet?" My grip on the wine bottle slipped, and I nearly dropped it. My first thought was denial. There had to be some reasonable explanation. A work friend. A wrong number. Anything except the obvious. I picked up his phone. His passcode was our wedding date, a little joke that suddenly felt cruel. My fingers moved on their own. The messages opened, and my world split along the seams. The thread went back months. "I miss your hands. I miss your mouth. She doesn't understand you like I do. We belong together." His replies were worse. "She's fragile after the 2nd miscarriage. I need to handle this carefully. Just be patient. You're the one I want. It's always been you." The words blurred. I scrolled past declarations, heart emojis, late-night confessions, and then the photos started. Her in lingerie. Her in a hotel mirror. He pressed against his chest, his arm wound around her waist in a restaurant I recognized instantly. The Beltline Bistro I'd suggested for our anniversary, the place he'd rejected because he was tired of it. The date stamped on their smiling faces was October 8th. 1 week ago. The room tilted. The candles I'd lit mocked me, their cheerful flickering suddenly obscene. I clicked the contact information. Victoria Hawthorne. His ex from college. The one he'd dated for years before me. The one he insisted was just a friend. The one he'd invited into our lives in small harmless ways, likes on social media, the occasional message, stories that sounded like nostalgia. The shower shut off. I heard him humming down the hall, carefree and off-key. My fingers moved in practiced calm as I set the phone back exactly where it had been. The panic, the disbelief, the urge to scream all dropped into a deep frozen place inside me and hardened. When he walked into the kitchen with a towel around his waist and water beading on his shoulders, I watched him like a stranger. He leaned in to kiss my cheek. "Something smells amazing. Happy anniversary, babe." I smiled. I still don't know how I pulled it off, but I smiled. Happy anniversary. We ate. He gave me a modest necklace. We drank red wine while he flirted, laughed, and made plans. I wondered if he'd bought her something shinier. That night, we made love and I hated every second. I hated his hands on me, the same hands that had traced the lines of another woman's body. I hated his whispered endearments. I hated that he thought I knew nothing. So I stayed quiet. I watched. And I began to plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned myself into a stranger, a spy in my own life. I created a burner email account and forwarded screenshots of every incriminating text. I went through our credit card statements and found hotel charges, fancy dinners, a bracelet that cost twice what he'd spent on my anniversary gift. Eventually, I hired a private investigator. His name was Sam, an ex-cop with kind eyes and a weary way of delivering bad news. I paid him with money Marcus never touched, savings from my work as a freelance graphic designer. A week later, Sam pushed a folder across a table at a coffee shop and said, gently, "You should see this." Inside were photographs. Marcus and Victoria at hotel entrances, slipping out of restaurants, kissing near a parking garage. The evidence was brutal and precise, but it was what came next that gutted me. Sam slid another page across the table. "There's something else," he said. "I thought you'd want the full picture." It was a printout of a social media post. Victoria's hand, jeweled with a diamond ring, gleamed up at me. The caption, "He finally asked. Can't believe I get to marry my best friend. New beginnings." The comments were the usual string of congratulations, but one in particular made my heart slow. "Can't wait to meet him. Bring him to Sunday dinner." Signed by her mother. Her family didn't even know who he was. Of course they didn't. How could she admit she was engaged to a married man? "And there's this," Sam added. "She's not just some random ex. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Specializes in couples. Writes about ethics and boundaries." He watched me carefully, waiting for the reaction. The irony made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. The woman my husband was betraying me with made a living fixing other people's broken relationships. Then Sam showed me a timeline he'd prepared, cross-referencing my calendar with Marcus's movements. My eyes snagged on one circled date, June 15th. The day of my second miscarriage. The day I lay in a hospital bed, bleeding and terrified, while my husband said he had to leave for a work emergency. Next to the date was a photo. Marcus and Victoria checking into a Marriott. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m., the exact time a nurse had squeezed my hand and told me they couldn't save the pregnancy. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Sounds warped. I must have stopped breathing because Sam's hand landed on my forearm and he said my name twice before I heard him. "Breathe," he urged quietly. "In and out. You're safe." I inhaled. Exhaled. The air felt thick and dirty, but it was air. When I could speak, I thanked him. My voice was flat, strange, but steady. As I slid everything back into the folder, another thought began to form. Slow. Cold. Precise. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I looked him in the eye. "Find a lawyer," I said. Then I paused. "And wait." November 1st, Marcus came home with Chinese takeout and the kind of nervous energy that makes a room buzz. We sat at the dining table, cartons spread out between us, chopsticks tapping. He cleared his throat once, twice, 3 times before he finally said, I've been thinking about Christmas. I sipped water and watched him over the rim of my glass. What about it? We always do small holidays, he said lightly. Just us, maybe your sister. I thought, maybe this year we could open it up a bit. Be more inclusive. Make it festive. He said the word inclusive like he'd just invented generosity. I ran into an old friend recently, he added, feigning casual. From college. Victoria. Remember her? Oh, I remembered. I had entire folders dedicated to remembering her. Vaguely, I lied. She can't travel to see her family. Work, schedules, all that. She'd be alone on Christmas Eve. He glanced at me, rehearsed concern in his eyes. I thought we could invite her. You know, do something nice. You're good with that kind of thing. The arrogance took my breath away. He was looking at me as if my reaction was the obstacle between him and a pleasant evening with both women in his life. He wanted his wife and his lover at the same table, sharing plates and inside jokes, proving to himself how evolved he was. I could have thrown the takeout in his face. I could have dropped Sam's photos in his lap. But that wouldn't give me what I wanted most. The right moment. The clean, undeniable exposure. So I set the carton down and folded my hands. Of course, I said smoothly. If she's spending Christmas alone, she should absolutely join us. That's what the holidays are about, right? Kindness. Generosity. Relief flooded his features. He reached out to squeeze my fingers, genuinely moved by what he took for saintly patience. You're amazing, he murmured. This is why I love you. You've got the biggest heart. I held his gaze and smiled like a woman whose heart wasn't currently made of ice. I just want you to be happy, I said. And in a way, it was true. I wanted him to be comfortable and confident right up until the moment I cut the ground out from under him. Later that night, while he zoned out in front of the TV, I went to the home office and opened my laptop. I already knew where Victoria worked, a glossy family wellness center downtown. I knew where she lived, what coffee shop she favored, what spin class she posted about. My research had taken me further though. Her practice used an easily hacked scheduling system. A few educated guesses at her security questions, her mother's maiden name, her childhood pet, and I had access to her digital calendar and work email. That was how I discovered that she wasn't just stringing along my husband. She was engaged to another man. His name was Alex Ramos, a pediatric surgeon who'd moved from Chicago for her. He'd proposed at a lakeside vacation spot, and she'd said yes with both hands. She wore his ring in every photo. The only thing missing from her online life was his face and his name. She kept him hidden. Reading through their messages, it was clear why. She was playing a double game, promising Alex a wedding, promising Marcus a future, watching which option would pay off best. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding, and realized that I wasn't the only person she'd deceived. There was another unsuspecting fool halfway across the city, dreaming of a life with a woman who'd been slipping into hotel rooms with someone else. That night I wrote an email. Dear Dr. Ramos, I began. You don't know me, but we share something important, a connection to Victoria. I told him enough to sound unhinged and truthful at once, then invited him to ask her about specific dates and places. I offered proof if he wanted it. I hit send and felt the world shift slightly beneath me. Phase 1, in motion. He replied within 3 hours. Skeptical but worried. I sent him a curated gallery of screenshots and photos. Nothing too explicit, nothing that would scar him more than necessary, just enough to make denial impossible. 3 days later, he wrote again. He'd confronted Victoria. She'd called me a jealous liar. He didn't know what to believe. That was when I dropped my last card. I'm not Marcus's ex, I wrote back. I'm his wife. 7 years married. Still living in the same house. Check the public records if you're unsure. You and I are on the same side here, whether you like it or not. I told him about Christmas Eve. How my husband had invited his ex for dinner. How he'd asked me to be mature about it. How they planned to spend the night pretending they were doing nothing wrong. Here's what I propose, I continued. They want a holiday where they can sit in my house and eat my food and act like the rest of us are props in their private drama. Let's give them a show they won't forget. If you're willing to help, come to Christmas Eve dinner as my surprise guest. Let them see each other through our eyes. I knew it was a risk. He could warn her, disappear, or go to the authorities. Instead, he waited 4 long days and then answered with 2 words. Count me in. We coordinated quietly. I gave him the side door code to our house's smart lock and a time to arrive. Half an hour into dinner, when the conversation would be warm and their guard down. He promised me he wouldn't have to fake the anger. I believed him. Outside my plotting, life masqueraded as normal. Marcus grew bolder, dropping Victoria's name into casual conversation as if he were testing boundaries. Victoria recommended this playlist, he'd say. Or, Victoria and I used to go to that place in college. Every time, he watched my face. Every time, I smiled and said something bland. I kept my rage folded neatly in the drawer of my planning document, where times and dates and screenshots sat beside notes for a lawyer. My sister, Lauren, called and immediately heard something wrong in my voice. We were close. She'd walked me through both miscarriages and more bad days than I could count. What's going on? She demanded. You sound off. I lied badly about work stress. Eventually I mentioned that Marcus had invited an old friend to Christmas Eve. What friend? She pressed. Victoria, I said lightly. His ex. There was a sharp silence and then, I beg your pardon? I repeated the story Marcus had given me about how this woman would otherwise spend Christmas alone. And you're okay with this? Lauren asked. He dated her for years. Now she's spending the holidays at your table? That's not generosity, that's weird. I told her I was fine, that I trusted my husband, that it was no big deal. She didn't buy it. If she looks at you sideways, I'm saying something, she warned. You know I will. For the first time in weeks, my smile was genuine. I know, I said. And I love you for it. But let me handle this one. When I consulted a divorce attorney, she listened to my story with professional calm. Georgia was a no-fault state, she explained, but judges were human. They paid attention to patterns of cruelty, especially when children or pregnancies were involved. You don't sound like someone looking for revenge, she said carefully. You sound like someone trying to survive. I nodded. Revenge was the sharp edge. Survival was the handle I gripped. By the time December rolled around, the pieces were in place. The legal strategy, the financial records, the guest list, and the man who would arrive at 9:30 p.m. to blow the evening open. All that remained was Christmas Eve. The day of the dinner dawned bright and cold. I woke before anyone else, adrenaline humming in my veins. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Leaner, eyes clearer, something hard and bright where softness used to live. I pulled on a red dress that walked the line between festive and war paint and headed to the kitchen. By the time Lauren padded in, the house smelled of roasting lamb and cinnamon. She poured coffee and watched me with narrowed eyes. You look like you're waiting for a storm, she said. I'm just tired, I lied. Holidays. She didn't push. The kids thundered downstairs, shrieking about presents, and the moment passed. We spent the morning unwrapping gifts. My niece and nephew scattered toy parts across the living room. Marcus handed me a small velvet box. Inside lay a pair of delicate earrings, beautiful, thoughtful, utterly meaningless to me now. I thanked him anyway. Then I handed him a flat rectangular package wrapped in silver paper and tied with ribbon. Open it tonight, I said. When we're alone. He grinned, certain it was something intimate. He set it under the tree, never guessing that inside was not a luxury watch, but divorce papers and a future he hadn't imagined. After lunch, he played with the kids while Lauren helped me prep the table. She watched me line up the cutlery and arrange the centerpiece. What time is your honored guest arriving? She asked, voice edged with sarcasm. 9, I said. Just in time to enjoy everything. If she breathes so much as breathes wrong, I'm going to have words, Lauren muttered. You are way too gracious. I thought about telling her everything. Instead, I hugged her and whispered, just be here. That's all I need. As evening fell, I laid out the dishes. Lamb, ham, vegetables, casseroles, rolls, desserts cooling on the counter. I set the table with our best china and 8 places instead of 7. When Marcus asked about the extra plate, I shrugged. Old superstition. For unexpected guests. He laughed and went back to his game on TV. At 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. He sprang up a little too fast. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked slowly to the door, savoring the theatrics. When I opened it, there she was. Victoria looked exactly like the images I'd seen and somehow more polished. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves. She wore a soft cream sweater and expensive jeans, a casual outfit calculated to look effortless. Her engagement ring caught the porch light as she held out a bottle of wine and a bouquet. You must be Marcus's wife, she said brightly. Thank you so much for including me. Her eyes flicked past me into the house, taking inventory. She stepped over the threshold smelling of cold air and designer perfume. Marcus appeared in the hall, his face lighting up a fraction too much before he forced his expression into something neutral. They hugged, a quick, respectable gesture, but I saw his fingers dig in just a little at her back. I'm so glad you came, he said. We're really happy to have you. I hung her coat in the closet, noting the quality of the cashmere and how she deliberately kept her ring on. A message. A test. Maybe both. In the living room, I introduced her to Lauren and James and the kids. Lauren's smile was cool and professional. So you're the famous Victoria, she said. I've heard a lot. All good things, I hope, Victoria replied, matching her energy. She complimented the decorations and made a fuss over the children, who warmed to her immediately. She was good at people, something that had made her career and destroyed my marriage in tandem. Marcus watched her with soft eyes. The two of them occasionally shared glances they thought were subtle. My smiles never slipped. At 9, we sat down to dinner. Candles burned low, throwing golden light over crystal glasses and polished cutlery. The food was perfect. I'd made sure of it. Marcus raised his glass first. To family, he said, and to opening our home to new friends. And to my incredible wife for putting this all together. He beamed at me, so proud of the woman he believed was protecting his secret. To your wife, Victoria echoed, holding my gaze. Her tone carried a strange challenge, as if we were both pretending at different things. To new beginnings, I said, lifting my own glass. Anna played at the edges of my mind, the girl at the restaurant who had watched them laughing over intimate dinners months before I knew. There were so many witnesses who'd stayed silent. Tonight, there would be none. Conversation during the meal was smooth at first. Lauren asked Victoria about her work. I'm a therapist, Victoria said. Mostly families and couples. She said it without flinching. That must be interesting, Lauren replied, her voice edged like a knife. Helping people work through trust issues. It can be challenging, Victoria said, oblivious or pretending to be. But worth it. The key is honesty. Once trust is compromised, it's very difficult to rebuild. I leaned in. Do you think it's always possible? I asked. To rebuild. She considered me, professional even here. Not always. Sometimes the betrayal reveals deeper incompatibilities. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to end it. Marcus shifted beside her, obviously uncomfortable. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:25 p.m. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a single word from Alex, outside. I'll be right back, I said, standing. Dessert needs a quick check. In the kitchen, I pulled out my phone and typed now. I hit send and set the device aside. My hands were steady as I plated slices of cake and pie. Meanwhile, at the side entrance, the smart lock clicked open. The sound of the front hallway echoed faintly. I walked back into the dining room, my smile firmly in place. "Before dessert," I said, "I have a surprise." Marcus looked puzzled but intrigued. "Another present?" he asked. "Something like that," I replied. "Remember how you said we should be more inclusive this Christmas?" He nodded slowly. "Well, I took your advice. I thought someone else deserved a seat at this table." Before anyone could respond, footsteps approached. A man appeared in the doorway. Tall, neatly dressed, eyes rimmed red with lack of sleep or too many tears. He looked past me and locked onto Victoria. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly. "Hope you don't mind. I invited myself." The color drained out of Victoria's face so fast she looked like she might faint. "Alex," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "That's a great question," he said, laughter brittle. "Maybe your host can answer. I'm here because your boyfriend's wife sent me an invitation." Marcus knocked his chair over as he shot to his feet. "What is this?" he demanded, looking from Alex to me to Victoria. "Who is he?" "This," I said calmly, "is Dr. Alex Ramos. He's a pediatric surgeon. He moved here for his fiancée." I gave Victoria a pointed look. "You didn't tell Marcus you were engaged?" The silence in the room thickened into something nearly physical. Lauren's jaw dropped. James blinked, trying to catch up. In the next room, the kids laughed at whatever animated movie they were watching, oblivious to the war exploding 10 feet away. "Fiancé," Marcus repeated, voice cracking. "What is she talking about?" "Don't," Alex snapped at Victoria. "Don't lie again. I've seen the photos. The screenshots. I've read every disgusting message." Marcus turned to me, eyes wide. "You knew," he stammered. For a moment, I just looked at him, letting him swim in confusion. Then I nodded. "Since our anniversary," I said evenly. "October 15th. While you were in the shower, your phone couldn't keep its mouth shut." Lauren tore her gaze off the scene unfolding and rounded on my husband. "You've been cheating on my sister," she hissed. "And you invited the woman here for Christmas dinner?" "It's not, this isn't how it looks," Marcus blurted, the oldest lie in the book. "We're just..." "What?" Alex cut in sharply. "Just having a harmless affair? Just stealing time out of your marriage and my engagement? We've been together for over a year. We picked venues. We talked about children. You told me I was your future. I told you." I asked quietly, eyes fixed on Victoria. "Or did she?" I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Let's help everyone get on the same page." I scrolled to a familiar exchange and began to read aloud. "She doesn't understand you like I do. I'm the one who really gets you. I miss your hands on me." I looked up. Ring any bells? Victoria's mask cracked. "You're twisting things," she began, but Alex cut her off again. "She said you were unstable," he told me harshly. "That you were some ex trying to ruin her life. She made me doubt my own eyes. That's what she does. She analyzes people for a living." Marcus's gaze jumped between us, desperate. "You were spying on me," he blurted, seizing the only offense he could find. "You violated my privacy?" I laughed. It sounded strange, even to me. "You violated our marriage," I said. "I just gathered proof." I flipped to another date. June 15th. "Remember that one?" His face went slack. "That's the day I lost our baby," I said. "I was in a hospital bed bleeding and terrified, and you told me you had to leave for an emergency at work." I held up Sam's photo, blown up on my screen. Marcus and Victoria entering a hotel lobby, his hand at the small of her back. 2:47 p.m. While a nurse was handing me tissues, you were checking into a Marriott. Lauren clapped a hand over her mouth. James swore under his breath. Even Alex looked momentarily stunned. Marcus reached for words and found none. "I'm sorry," he finally croaked. "It wasn't like. It was exactly like that," I cut in. "You chose to be somewhere else. Twice. At least." The only sound in the room was the crackle of a dying candle wick. He sagged back into his chair. "Why didn't you say anything?" he whispered. "Why didn't you just leave?" I studied the man I'd once thought I'd grow old with and felt nothing but a sharp, exhausted ache. "Because you needed to see yourself clearly," I said. "You needed an audience. You needed to know what it feels like to have your world torn apart in the brightest light possible." I walked to the Christmas tree, picked up the silver-wrapped box with his name on it, and set it in front of him. "Speaking of clarity," I added, "open your present." His fingers fumbled at the ribbon, at the paper, tearing until the lid came free. Divorce documents slid out and scattered among the plates. The word dissolution stared back at him from several angles. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. "You've officially been served." Victoria made a move toward the door, but Alex stepped into her path. "Where are you going?" he asked steadily. "You're the star of the show." "This is insane," she snapped. "None of this is legal." "She can't do any of this." "Legal," I repeated. "Oh, you should worry about legal. Just not the way you think." I pulled another envelope from my pocket and laid it beside the wreckage of the dinner. "This one's for the licensing board," I explained. "About a therapist who lectures on ethics while conducting a long-term affair with a married client." I included dates, locations, and notes on how you used your professional insight to help him lie to his fragile wife. For the first time, real fear hollowed out her face. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "They'll suspend me. I'll lose my practice." "You probably should have thought about that before," Lauren said coldly. "Before you turned my sister's worst days into your date nights." Alex reached into his pocket and pulled something small and bright. He dropped her engagement ring onto the table. It bounced once and landed in the gravy boat, sinking slowly into cooled sauce. "We're done," he said. "Your mother knows everything. She's embarrassed for you. That should tell you something." Victoria looked around as if there might be a script she could still follow out of this mess. Finding none, she grabbed her bag and fled. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the glasses. A moment later, her car engine roared down the street. Alex stood there for a beat, breathing, then turned to me. "I'm sorry you had to live through this," he said quietly. "You deserved better." "So did you," I replied. "Thank you for showing up." "They needed consequences," he said simply. "Both of them." Then he nodded once at Lauren and James and left through the same side door he'd entered, his shoulders squared. That left the four of us in the wreckage. Marcus, white-faced and still clutching part of the paperwork, Lauren, shaking with fury, James, quietly furious, and me, suddenly very tired. "Get out," I told my husband. The words came out low but firm. "This is my home," he said hoarsely, but even he didn't sound convinced. "No," I said. "It's mine. My grandmother paid the down payment. The deed is in my name." I tapped the top page of the divorce stack. "My lawyer has made sure it stays that way. Along with half of everything else you didn't blow on hotels and jewelry." "You're going to take everything?" he asked weakly. "You already took everything that mattered," I answered. "You just didn't notice." I laid out his options. Sign now and accept the terms, or drag everything through court and have every disgusting detail become public record. He stared at the table, at the ring glinting among the gravy streaks, at the cold lamb. The candles burned low. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. I felt something inside finally snap. "You did hurt me," I replied. "While I went through surgeries and losses and grief, you chose distraction. You chose her. Over and over. You don't get to wrap that in good intentions." Lauren stepped closer, solid at my shoulder. "You heard her," she said. "Pack a bag. Go. He gathered the papers like a man collecting his own crimes and stumbled toward the door. At the threshold, he looked back at me one last time. "I love you," he whispered. "No," I said. "You love yourself." The door closed behind him with a dull final thud. The moment it latched, the adrenaline that had been holding me together dissolved. I crumpled into the nearest chair and sobbed like my ribs were breaking. Lauren was there instantly, folding me into her arms, murmuring into my hair. "I've got you," she kept repeating. "You're safe. You're not alone." I clung to her while the table that had been my stage blurred through tears. The lamb, the wine, the ring in the gravy, all of it looked absurd and tragic at once. Somewhere deep inside, a new thought flickered. Whatever came next, it would be mine to shape. 6 months after that dinner, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman looking back. My cheeks were sharper. My eyes had lost their softness, traded in for something clearer, more grounded. June 15th. The date glowed on my phone. A year earlier, I'd been in a hospital bed, clutching a nurse's hand while Marcus slipped into a hotel room. This year, I was standing in a renovated master suite that belonged solely to me. The divorce had moved quickly. Marcus signed within a week when my lawyer, Vivian, laid out the financial evidence and the likely outcome if we went to trial. He left with his car, his clothes, and a portion of our savings. I kept the house, the bulk of our assets, and the paper trail. The first months were brutal anyway. Long nights, unexpected waves of grief, moments when I almost called him out of habit and then remembered who he really was. Therapy helped. My new therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, talked about grief not just for the person I'd lost, but for the life I'd thought I was building. "You're burying a story," she explained. "The story of your marriage, the story of who you believed he was, the story of the family you were going to have together. That hurts like a death." I learned to let myself mourn. I cried in her office, in my car, in the aisle at the grocery store when I passed the baby section and my chest clenched. Slowly though, other things grew in the cleared space. I painted the bedroom in new colors Marcus had always vetoed. I turned his office into a studio and pulled my old paints out of storage. I expanded my freelance work into a small design agency, hired 2 assistants, and realized I liked being the one in charge. The house, once full of his presence, shifted until it felt like mine instead of ours. One day, a month after the dinner, I met Alex for coffee. We sat across from each other like survivors comparing scars. "Part of me wants to be mad at you," he admitted, stirring his drink, "for staging that ambush. But the rest of me knows you saved me from marrying a stranger." I told him the truth, that I'd nearly gone quiet, nearly walked away without exposing anything. "If I had," I said, "you'd probably be picking out flowers right now, and she'd still be balancing 2 lives." He nodded slowly. "I read that complaint you filed," he said. "They suspended her?" 2 years, I replied. "Ethics training, mandatory therapy. No license until she proves she's not a danger. Her practice dropped her. Last I heard, she moved back to Florida." He stared into his cup for a long moment. "Do you regret it?" he finally asked. "The spectacle? The board complaint? The book you're thinking about writing?" "I regret marrying him," I said. "But I don't regret pulling the curtain back. People like that count on our silence." His mouth tipped into a tired smile. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think you're one of the bravest people I've ever met." Running became my moving meditation. I started in February, dragging myself out of bed when the heartbreak felt heaviest. At first, I could barely make it around the block. By June, I could run 5 miles without stopping. The rhythm of my feet hitting pavement worked things out of my mind I didn't know how to say out loud. One morning, after a run, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "My name is Jennifer." I was seeing Marcus. He told me he was divorced but never mentioned why. "I found your name on a document, did some searching, and learned what really happened. I just wanted to say thank you for documenting everything. You saved me from wasting any more of my time." I sat on the edge of my bed, sweaty and stunned. He'd moved on so fast it was almost comical. I texted back, "I'm sorry he touched your life at all. I'm glad you know the truth now. Take care of yourself." It hurt, but it also confirmed what I already knew. Nothing I'd done had ruined him. He'd ruined himself. Later that same day, a car pulled up outside my house as I returned from another run. A young woman climbed out, red hair tucked under a cap, fidgeting with her keys. "Are you the one who was married to Marcus?" she asked nervously. "I'm Anna. I work at the Beltline Bistro." The air suddenly felt very thin. "I saw him there a lot last year," she continued. "With a woman who wasn't you. I knew he wasn't single. He had a ring at first, then he stopped wearing it. I didn't know how to tell you. But Jennifer told me what you did, how you called them out, and I thought..." She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a folder. "I'm not proud of it, but I took pictures. I figured someone might need proof one day." On the screen, there they were, Marcus and Victoria, months before I thought the affair had started, leaning across the table, fingers intertwined, his smile the same old familiar thing he used to give me. She emailed the images to me on the sidewalk. Evidence of how long he'd been lying. "Why help me now?" I asked. Anna shrugged. "Guys like him always land on their feet. They count on women being quiet. You weren't quiet. So, I wanted to help you stay loud." When she drove away, I stood there for a long time, phone warm in my hand, feeling something strange and new. Not triumph exactly, but a kind of collective strength, like women lifting each other up against the weight of someone else's choices. That afternoon, I opened a blank document on my laptop. For months, friends had joked that my story sounded like something out of a movie. A small publisher had reached out after hearing a watered-down version through a friend. I'd always brushed the idea off. Too raw. Too exposed. But now, looking at the blinking cursor, I felt ready. I began with the line that had started it all. My husband asking me to be mature about his ex joining us for Christmas dinner. Then I wrote about the messages, the investigator, the email to Alex, the carefully set table, the ring in the gravy boat. The words poured out in a rush, grief and fury and dark humor woven together. I called the draft my beautiful vengeance. By the time I looked up, the sun had shifted across the room and my shoulders ached, but I felt lighter than I had in months. Whatever happened with the manuscript, I had given shape to the fire that had burned my old life down. A year later, that book sat on shelves in bookstores and on nightstands in houses I would never see. It hit a bestseller list 3 weeks after release. My inbox filled with messages from strangers who saw their own pain in my pages. Women who'd found secret phones, men blindsided by double lives, people who'd been told to be mature about things that were slowly killing them. A streaming platform optioned the rights. I sat under bright lights on podcasts and in interviews and told the story about the Christmas dinner and the side door and the moment I handed my husband his own destruction wrapped in silver paper. Through it all, life quietly expanded. My design agency grew. I hired more staff. I traveled to cities I'd only ever seen in photos. Paris, Tokyo, Barcelona. I ate alone in beautiful restaurants and realized I liked my own company. Marcus threatened legal action when the book came out. His lawyer sent a stiff letter claiming I'd defamed him. Vivian read it once, snorted and said, "He's welcome to try. Truth is an absolute defense." We'd changed names and details where needed, but the heart of the story was documented in bank statements, phone records, and photos. He didn't follow through. Bluster was always his first instinct, retreating his second. I heard from friends that he'd bounced through relationships, telling versions of the story where he was the victim of a vindictive ex who couldn't let go. Every time, someone who'd read the book corrected him. That was a kind of justice too. As for Victoria, word drifted through the grapevine. The licensing board eventually revoked her credentials after another complaint surfaced. She'd been involved with yet another client years earlier. Mine had just been the incident that finally forced them to look closer. Last I heard, she was working behind a reception desk in a small town, Her degree more of a ghost than a tool. I didn't celebrate her downfall. I'd already had my reckoning with her. The rest was just consequence catching up. Alex texted sometimes. He'd started seeing a nurse from his hospital, someone steady and kind. I brought your book to our third date, he joked once. Told her if she ever wanted to cheat, she had to at least be original. I told him I was happy for him, and I meant it. Another December rolled around. Snow dusted the roofs in my Atlanta neighborhood, softening edges and hiding old stains. Lauren called to ask what my plans were. Same as last year, I said. Quiet dinner. You, me, a few friends. No surprise guests. The kids are already lobbying for your chocolate cake, she said. So you're stuck with us. After we hung up, I looked around my studio. A half-finished painting stood on the easel, bold strokes of red and black, streaks of white and gold cutting through. Rage and hope, tangled but visible. My phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number. I just finished reading your book. I found messages on my husband's phone last night. I was going to pretend I hadn't seen them. Then I thought of you. I'm not going to pretend anymore. I replied, you don't need luck. You need honesty and courage. You already have both. Whatever you decide, you're not alone. That, more than the sales or the interviews, felt like the real victory. Not the ring drowning in gravy or the look on Marcus's face when he realized I'd known for months. The best revenge wasn't the spectacle. It was the life that followed. A life where I woke up in a bed I'd chosen, in a house I owned, in a story I was writing. One where betrayal was something that had happened to me, not something that defined me. My heart would always carry the scars, of babies lost, of trust shattered, but the scars no longer dictated the shape of my days. I picked up my brush and added a thin line of bright gold across the canvas, cutting through the darker colors. Hard-won hope. And that's my life story for today. If it spoke to you, if you saw yourself in any part of it, know this: you are stronger than the lies told to you. You deserve better than the bare minimum dressed up as love. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, you're welcome to stay a while. Subscribe, leave your thoughts, tell me which city you're listening from. I love knowing where my voices travel. Your support, your comments, even your little thank you notes keep this channel alive and help me keep bringing you new life stories. On your screen, there are 2 more waiting for you, each with its own twists and truths. Until next time, I'm sending you courage, clarity, and so much respect.